Thank you, Eric. Okay, so we'll move on to the third speaker. That was Kate. Whenever you're ready, Kate.
You can address me as Mrs. Perkins, please.
Sorry. Okay.
My name is Kate Perkins. I'm president of the board at Trout Lake Community Centre. And I'm here this evening, obviously, to speak on Commissioner De Genova's motion. As much as I appreciate the intent, and I know the spirit from which Commissioner De Genova comes when she speaks of this, I'm unclear of the purpose of what it's looking to achieve. Other than I understand with public consultation, obviously the public enthusiasm that was shown at the Kerrisdale and the Killarney public meetings is really an excellent example of the demonstration of the importance of the roles that associations play in our communities, myself included. We are the liaisons and we're the advocates for our communities. At Trout Lake on Family Day, we had over 1,000 people come through, and on that we were able to share our point of view on what's currently happening and also solicit feedback. And I think that's our job through associations, to be able to take a pulse of our own communities. So this being said, what we are negotiating is a contract. The initial proposal that was put forward, as every association can attest to, none of us agreed. We agreed in principle on a lot, but the funding model was the key point that none of us agreed to. And I would agree with Eric on that. That was a policy shift that was being put forward. What we are now faced with is coming to the table that is now negotiable. That non-negotiable piece has been removed. And we are now at the table. And we're already 2 weeks into that process. And to date, we discussed it, they're more than the discussions, the negotiations through the mediation skills of Terry Harris. They've been respectful, and to date they've been productive. And yes, it's early days, and we'll see how this continues to move on. But we're still at the table, and there are. It's more than just some. There's 12, and we're all kind of moving what we feel is the best for our communities, including the ones that aren't at the table. They want what's best for their communities as well. And at the heart of the negotiations really is that funding model. And it's complex, and this is a contract. This isn't, even the people at the table have difficulties understanding the complexities of what we're trying to work through. And I think that becomes even harder. And I think my concern is that mediating this in the public could potentially jeopardize the negotiations that are under. And it concerns me greatly that might be an irresponsible way to go currently. I do understand the frustration though, and I understand I'm big on process, and there was definitely a lack of process in where we've gotten to. However, I do think on January 2nd, when we put in that counter proposal, what we were asking for was to negotiate, and that's where we find ourselves. And hopefully we can rectify that process and the jump or lack of process at the negotiating table, and that's what I'm hoping for. I also find, the external debate, even within the commissioners, to be distracting, and I really want all parties to focus on what needs to be done, and that's updating, not recreating, but updating a partnership that reflects the goals of the associations and also our board. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, so speakers list you've developed. Commissioner De Genova, you have your hand up.
I first have Perkins.
Mrs. Thank you.
So I understand that your community center right now, and I respect very much that your community center is one of the centers that is one of the 12 in negotiations. I suppose I'm concerned about the other centers that aren't in negotiations right now, and if you don't have a seat at the table, and you're not having an open dialogue through public consultation, how can we even get those centers to the table? So I appreciate where you're coming from, but if you were a center that wasn't at the table, would you think that more public consultation and speaking with commissioners, and maybe that would encourage some of the other centers to come to the table?
With all due respect, I thought that the time that the commissioners should have been at the table was about 6 months ago. As for the centers that, while we were doing roundtable, they were invited. As for the centers that aren't at the table, I think the 12 still feel that even not being at the table, being able to represent their point of view, they may disagree, but I still feel that their voice should be heard, even if they're not at the table. We set up a way of being able to get information or opinion or some kind of feedback through a distribution of our own. And I hope they could come to the table.
Questions?
Thank you. My question is directed to Mrs. Perkins. I got that right. My question is in regard to the comment you made around consultation, the effect it may have on the negotiating process. And my question is this: is there a method by which you could foresee the public participating which does not disrupt the process, or do you think that any consultation would be disruptive?
I think this is a contract negotiation. That's what we're under. And that contract negotiation is being negotiated with staff. And the negotiation has, brought about already that we're looking at a partnership model, not an advisory model, not a service delivery. We're looking at a partnership. That's what we're working through. It was also a point of clarity. The funding model is negotiable, and that's what we will be dealing with. So to answer your question, I would really like to, I don't want to have a negotiation process out in the public realm right now. I want to come to the table and have a negotiation between two parties of a contract.
Thank you.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Okay, information.
Could I ask the general manager a question? Because I think it would clarify what we're talking
Okay,
about.
can I put you on the speakers list first, because that sounds like better. So we'll go to Commissioner Jasper, and then we'll
Yes,
go to you,
okay,
okay?
yeah.
Commissioner Jasper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to build on Commissioner Luke's question to Mrs. Perkins.
All right, I'm just being a bit of a weenie. You can call me Kate.
The board did approve the public consultation process at the special board meeting. We have before us a motion that stipulates a certain number of public meetings. This sort of based on your concerns, would you say that it might be a better time to have public consultation when hopefully we have a negotiated agreement that then can be taken out jointly between the associations and the park board to share the mechanics of that plan? It sounds the timing of the consultation is your concern. Not that there shouldn't be consultation. So would you feel more comfortable that consultation was to take place post agreed contract?
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kruger, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, my question is, there's nothing in the motion that says anything about negotiation. It talks about consultation. I'll go to my question to the general manager. So I just want to clarify with Mr. Perkins. You had mentioned that you were concerned about negotiation taking place in the public. I don't think there's anything in that motion that talks about negotiation being taking place in the public. I think the key is that commissioners, and I heard this from you earlier, that commissioners weren't there. Thank you, I did come to the meeting, but most of the commissioners weren't there. So, did you feel that you weren't being listened to? Because it seems as if what I keep hearing from speaker after speaker, including yourself, was that it's more of a staff-driven process than a commissioner-driven process.
Commissioner, I just want to clarify your questions. You had a question earlier that I think we were starting on about, or clarifying whether or not the negotiations were involved in the motion. Was that a question you wanted to ask?
That's a question, and the second question is the involvement of our commissioners. So
Okay.
Sorry, I should have phrased two questions.
So that's the first, did you understand the questions? There were two questions coming at you. The first one was involving whether or not there was no negotiations in the actual motion. So correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Cooper, but
That was my question, because Mrs. Perkins had said earlier, she was concerned about negotiations taking place in the public. And I just wanted to...
Well, because the consultation model that's been proposed is that would be part of the consultation, is the partnership, the funding model, and those are the actual specifics that we are involved in the negotiation. So it may be public consultation, but it's still about a piece that's being negotiated at the table. And with any negotiation with contract, you don't do that in the public, you do that at the table. So that's where my concern is, although I understand, well, I'm not going to suppose, I shouldn't say that. I think I understand Commissioner De Genova's intent of the consultation piece, which is important, but my concern is, again, related to the pieces that are being discussed in that consultation are pieces that should be discussed at the table.
so you had a second question?
Yeah, I have to follow up then. So that, in terms of the public consultation, it seems like we're ahead of ourselves. Do you feel like we got ahead of ourselves in terms of we are not, we never had the public consultation on the public policy. So there was no decision really made, it was just staff-driven. And the commissioners, like, I was never told that everything is on the table now. At every meeting that I went to, we were told it was non-negotiable.
I'm going to ask you to...
No, but I want to ask, did you hear the same thing when you were at those meetings? Because I went to all of the meetings. I think there were 6 of them. And at every meeting and at every community center meeting I went to, I heard the general manager say, and I heard the city manager say, that the financial piece was non-negotiable.
Okay.
So did you hear the same thing as me, or was I at a different meeting?
I heard the same thing on October 4th, Commissioner Cooper, but subsequently, and perhaps, I would say, well, not perhaps, due to public pressure, and I think being told commissioners the point of view that this wasn't an okay thing, that has been moved, to which I'm very grateful that we can actually get to the table and move somewhere forward with the discussions that we have. And to date, that's what's happening.
So would you say the limited public consultation that we have had has been successful?
I think if this had not gone public with a non-negotiable piece, this wouldn't have been in the public to begin with. I think we would have just gone straight to negotiations and we could have continued with that. However, if that was the call, it's been rectified because now we're at the table and that's what I want to focus on and that's what we should be doing, is working at the best contract. I understand that the process dropped, however, the process has been picked up and I'm hoping that we can continue with that so we actually get a partnership and a JOA that we need.